Hello and welcome back once again to the third tutorial video in this impromptu tutorial series over planning an argumentative essay using the Toulmin Model Sentences. I had told my students that I would post a third video of how to create your outline from all the planning that you've done on your chart. And I don't have my chart pulled up here, but I do have all of the arguments that I'm going to use, and I'm going to go ahead and just delete those angles that last time I corrected in the previous video. And so this is what we're left with: our our four different arguments that we're going to explore and put this into an outline. So on the planning sheet, you have an outline model. It looks a little bit like this. I've just kind of blown it up so that we can see it a little easier. And you're basically just going to follow what it says. Put your thesis up here. So you just copy and paste. I like to go ahead and just put my simple thesis in for now. And before we finish our, before we actually finish our outline here, we will go ahead and change it into a complex thesis. All right. So I've got my simple thesis, an individual. Whoops. There we go. Fix that. Awesome. An individual is often willing to sacrifice personal freedoms for his or her safety. My claim from my first argument, here's my first argument right here. The claim is the therefore statement. Okay. Mankind is driven to preserve its species. Okay. I don't have a, oh, whoops, there we go, put it right here. I'm getting ahead of myself. There we go. And I'll just phrase it as a complete sentence. Yeah. And an outline doesn't, isn't the final decider in how you're going to word your rough draft, but I still like to write my outlines in complete sentences, or at least complete thoughts. So there's my first claim. Next, I have my reservation, which I didn't have a reservation in this Toulmin sentence, so I can delete that. Now, support from my argument number one. My support is my because statement. Is, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and flip around my warrant and my support. That makes much better sense. This is more supportable. Because all organisms are driven to preserve the species, therefore mankind is driven to preserve its species since man is an organism. That makes much more sense as a warrant. So anyway, back to this. I'm going to take the support from my argument here and just put it in my outline. Just like that. Yeah, capitalize it and put a period. Boom. Cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and come up with some specific examples or a specific piece of evidence. I basically just need to see how the heck am I going to support this idea. Okay? Because this in itself needs, while it doesn't necessarily need proving, this is kind of a universal constant in biology. All life is driven to preserve itself. I would like to illustrate this concept. I can't just leave this hanging. I need to provide some illustration. So I think my evidence and example here, my evidence/example, is really going to be more of an illustration. Okay? So I just write down illustrations of lower life forms such, I'll just put in parentheses, plants, fungus, bacteria, etc., which have been engineered, by evolution. Over millions of years of evolutionary engineering, they have been engineered to propagate. Oops. Propagate themselves. Yeah, to spread themselves. Plants grow the way they grow. They grow towards sunlight. They grow outward. The seed spreading mechanics that they utilize, that's all been developed over millions of years of evolution so that they can spread their seeds furthest. Same with how fungus grows and how bacteria grows. I can also, just because I like to think of multiple ways of illustrating this, illustrations of higher life forms, because we are talking about people. It would be kind of weak to just prove a fact about people based on what lower life forms do, but this still applies to higher life forms as well. Animals humans, which, while we don't like to think of how we have been programmed or engineered by evolution, we still have, we're still driven by instinct. Yeah, we are driven by instinct to protect ourselves and our offspring. I know that's terribly cold sounding. To call our families our offspring, or our children our offspring, but basically in biological terms, that's what we're talking about. We are programmed by evolution to protect ourselves and our offspring, and that's to preserve our species. Okay. One of the last things we need to add is our warrant from argument number 1. Here we go. Man is an organism. And if I really wanted to be specific, I could add some backing to why that is. I could probably cite one of the ancient Greeks' definition of what makes an organism, but let's not do that. Let's not be that tedious here. Cool. So that's how I did just one part of my outline, just one complete argument. I've got my claim, my support, and then my examples / evidence of my support. Okay. I'm going to go and just skip ahead here to having filled out the rest of my outline. Show you what that looks like. Okay, and there you go. Just kind of pasted in the rest of this, and I've gone ahead and labeled all the parts. We have our claim number 1 is about mankind being driven to preserve its species. Claim number 2, people generally are not idealistic. This is all stuff from my previous notes that you saw in the previous video. Claim number 3, society is dependent on citizens sacrificing personal freedoms. And claim number 4, it is human nature to do all of this. Okay, and I've got for each one I've got support, which is my logical support, and then I've got some type of evidence or explanation. Now I want to take a look at the different types of evidence and explanation that I use. On my first one, I use just simple illustrations, because this concept, the concept that all organisms are driven to preserve the species, that's a pretty basic concept. That really doesn't need much proof. I just need to illustrate it. To clarify what I'm talking about. That's what good writers do. Even if it seems obvious to us, good writers still provide illustrations. They expand on their ideas. Okay, but let's take a look at the next one. See how I need to support this one. First of all, in my second claim, I actually have a reservation. Once I make this claim that people are generally not idealistic, I am going to immediately qualify my argument by pointing out that yes, throughout history there have been some notable idealists, guys like Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, etc. But the actions of Mandela, Gandhi, and all them, they do not reflect the average man, which is what H.L. Mencken's quote was about. So I want to get that out of the way right away so that my readers understand that I'm not an idiot. I'm not just ignoring these people. I'm saying that yes, I know that Nelson Mandela and Gandhi exist, but the average man is not Nelson Mandela or Gandhi. So let's go on. Here's my support. People tend to make choices based on the tangible or practical benefits that choice offers, rather than based on upholding some ideal. Yeah, people tend to make choices based on the concrete rewards that choice can offer them, rather than based on idealistic reasons. Okay, that's how they tend to act. We're typically realists. We're pragmatists. So I've come up here with kind of an illustration of this. Okay, an illustration of this would be that the average individual works a steady job he or she generally does not love, although he or she has the freedom to pursue anything. He or she does this because of the security that job offers. Yeah, the security of that steady paycheck. Okay, so that's just a very simple illustration. I haven't had to crack open a history textbook. I haven't had to, search Wikipedia or anything like that. I just use this very simple illustration that very well illustrates this my reasoning here. So that shows you how on the Q3 exam, when you're sitting there, on the Q3 question, when you're sitting there in the exam room, you don't have access to a dictionary, you don't have access to an encyclopedia, you can't use your phone for the internet. This is how you just come up with examples and explanations. Just come up with illustrations. You don't have to crack a book or anything or do any sound research. Just come up with an illustration, a simple illustration. Let's move on to my third claim here. Society is dependent on its citizens sacrificing personal freedoms. My logical support is that a society can only prosper when it limits the personal freedoms of citizens in some way. And my again, I've chosen just some basic illustrations. This time I'm going to use some specific things. I've got some specific things I'm going to mention. But I'm going to start off just illustrating how early man, when cavemen, they typically didn't live alone. They even when man was a new species, he binded himself with other people for the protection that community offered. As man evolved, ancient man eventually built nations, and the purpose of being a part of a nation was to have the protection that nation offered the individual. Then I want to talk about how modern nations have taken this a step further by taking even more freedoms away. And I can probably at this point mention things like the Patriot Act, that sort of thing, the things we're all thinking when we read this prompt. How members of the citizens in the United States have had to surrender even more freedom, but in exchange, that is a trade-off for even greater security. Yeah, at least security from one another, not necessarily from our government, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, cool. So that's how I'm going to support the logic of my argument, just with those kinds of examples. Yeah, again, I'm mainly just illustrating concepts. I might mention ancient Rome, ancient Greece, but I'm not going to really talk about anything specifically. The most specific thing I'm going to mention is that the United States and Great Britain are both going to extreme measures to counter terrorist activity. I might mention the Patriot Act. I might not. Who knows? My reader's likely going to know what the heck I'm talking about. Finally, my last claim. This one I use the most specific evidence. My last claim says that it is human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety, and my logical support is that people throughout history often have sacrificed for personal freedom for safety. And I want to do a couple of different things. I want to have like a breadth of evidence. Just one of these would work, but this pairing works really well. First of all, I want to appeal to make a biblical reference, just because the Bible is the most referenced book in literature, and it gives me ethos. It makes me sound smart. People throughout history have often sacrificed personal freedoms. The denial of the Apostle Peter, when Peter in the New Testament denied Jesus as Jesus was being crucified, that is an example of a man who sacrificed his freedom to be associated with Jesus, which was his inalienable right. He sacrificed that right for his safety because he didn't want to be the next one put up on the cross. And so that's just a good biblical illustration. But I run the risk of making a hasty generalization if I use this one guy to support this claim. So I want to use a much larger and broader example. So I'm going to say the failed slave revolt at Harper's Ferry. And actually, I'm probably just going to use any failed revolt, or most failed revolts. Let's not get carried away. Most failed revolts. Yeah. Most failed revolts, or most revolts fail simply because the revolutionaries cannot get enough people to join their side. Those people would rather be safe, would rather keep their lives than have whatever the freedom is they're fighting for. So my illustration will be, this is the reason of most failed revolts. I'll cite the slave revolt at Harper's Ferry, and, etc. I'll come up with another one here in a little bit. Okay. Actually, I could just cite really any failed revolt where that was the case, where, here at Harper's Ferry, John Brown thought that his raid on the ammunition depot at Harper's Ferry, he thought that would incite other slaves across the nation to revolt, or at least in the neighboring counties to rise up, and that didn't happen. They were too afraid, among other things. So that is how I go from my chart to my detailed outline. The last thing I want to do is to settle on a final thesis, but before I can do that, I need to decide which 3 claims I'm really going to pursue. For this assignment, I just want you guys to pursue 3 supporting claims, not all 4, because, in the testing room, when you have 40 minutes to write, really 3 good paragraphs is all you should shoot for. If you're a really fast writer, shoot for 4, but otherwise let's just shoot for 3. You can score an 8 or a 9 with a 500-word essay. So the claim I'm going to take out is this one. And that's because I'm an English teacher. My strengths lie in the social sciences and the humanities. I don't know enough about, I know this about biology, but I don't know much more beyond that. And so I'd rather avoid that topic altogether, which is okay because I've got 3 other really good topics. All right, so from my 3 other topics, I'm going to tweak my thesis so that it is strong enough to guide a whole essay. And the first thing I'd like to do is to add a counter-argument element. I like to do this for every thesis because it's just a simple trick to make your thesis more sophisticated. All right, I've just pasted in here a counter-argument that I could just kind of throw in here. Obviously, the rest of my introduction would be leading up to this. I know this looks like it's just coming out of the ethers, but my introduction would lead up to this, and this just kind of provides, this kind of tells my reader, hey, I'm not an idiot. I'm acknowledging that there is another side to my argument. So my counter-argument, although many people would publicly claim otherwise, the average individual is often willing to sacrifice personal freedoms for his or her safety. Now, I want to make this a closed thesis, okay, due to the fact that, see, my first argument is about people being idealistic, or people not being idealistic, due to the fact that people are idealistic, or excuse me, they're not idealistic, they are pragmatic. The opposite. And I want to keep my parallelism. People are pragmatic. People are, see, society is dependent on citizens. Early man giving, okay. People are pragmatic. People are community, community oriented. People are pragmatic, community oriented, and it's human nature to sacrifice personal freedoms for safety. They've always done this. They're predictable. They're habitual. We've always done this. We will continue to do this. Something like that. Okay. What that does is it closes off my thesis to explore just these 3 things, and it's specific and it is sophisticated. Now, what I do from here is write up my body paragraphs. Start composing my rough draft, and look at this. This is another great thing about adding a counter-argument element to your thesis. Now I know how to start my introduction. This counter-argument, although many people would publicly claim otherwise, I know exactly how I'm going to start my introduction. I'm going to start how people oftentimes do things differently than what they say they're going to do. Just some basic stuff like that. Okay. So I hope this video has helped you a little bit. As I said, the next step after this is to go ahead and start composing your body paragraphs. But hey, when you've already got this, the paragraph starts to write itself. You start with your claim, you make any counter arguments you need to make, you support it logically, and then you start in with your evidence and explanations. And this section here will take up the majority of the paragraph. When you're writing your paragraphs, make sure that you only state the warrant if you absolutely feel you have to. Something like this, making choices based on tangible practical benefits and abandoning the ideal, is pragmatic. Well, that's just a definition of pragmatism. I'm not going to insult the AP readers by defining what pragmatism is. So when I write my when I start writing my rough draft, I'm going to take the warrants out of all of these, I think. Yeah, I might leave that one in, but yeah, I might leave that one in too. But for the most part, yeah, if I was doing this one, I would definitely leave out the warrant of man as an organism. You wouldn't want to throw that into an essay because it's just, duh, of course. So I hope this has helped you a little bit. Stay tuned. Maybe I'll do a 4th impromptu video. I hadn't planned on doing a 1st, a 2nd, or a 3rd, but maybe I'll do a 4th. I hope this has helped, and stay tuned.